Alright, so today we're talking about Over the Edge 1999. So yeah, we're just talking about that mainly because it is one of the controversial pay-per-views, which we'll get into why in a minute. But yeah, as you see, this is the post for it. So we're gonna get into it now. Basically, all I'm gonna do is just talk about where it is, talk about the matches, and then we're going to get into why it is why it's controversial and the reactions to it and the reception. But we're going to start out with just the pay-per-view in general, then the matches, then we're going to get into the other stuff that made it controversial basically afterwards. So Over the Edge in 1999 was a wrestling pay-per-view event produced by WWE. It's the second annual and final Over the Edge, and it took place May 23rd, 1999, at the Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri. The first Over the Edge event was in Your House series in May 1998. But following the discontinuing of In Your House shows, the second Over the Edge was scheduled as its own pay-per-view. So the attendance was 16,472, and the tagline was "Evil is once perceived as what men did not understand, but now man understands it very well." So in the main event, The Undertaker faced Stone Cold in a singles match. Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon were the guest referees for the WWF Championship. Of 6 scheduled bouts of the undercard, 2 received more promotion than the other matches. The first singles match was The Rock defeated Triple H by disqualification. The other was an 8-man elimination tag match in which the Union defeated the Corporate Ministry. The event is infamous for an accident involving Owen Hart, who was scheduled to face a Godfather for the Intercontinental Championship. During the event, wrestling under the Blue Blazer gimmick, Hart was to make a superhero-like ring entrance. So we'll get into that later on. So criticism later arose over Vince McMahon's decision to continue the show after Hart's accident. In court, his widow Martha, children and parents sued the WWF, contending that poor planning of the dangerous stunt caused Hart's death. So, due to the accident and controversy surrounding the event, the Over the Edge name retired, and its pay-per-view slot was replaced by Judgment Day in 2000. The event was also not released for home video viewing until the launch of the WWE Network in 2014. Where an edited version of the show displays tributes to Hart at the beginning, but otherwise removes any mention of his involvement. So now we're going to get into the production of it, basically. So it was obviously a professional wrestling pay-per-view. First ever one took in May of '98. In the In Your House series. The lineup of a monthly pay-per-view launched in 1995 to its supplement of the company's major events. Following the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in Your House event in February 1999, the WWF retired the In Your House branding and transitioned to giving each monthly pay-per-view a permanent identity. As part of this transition, the WWF scheduled a second Over the Edge for May 23rd, 1999, promoting it as a standalone event held at Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri. It became the first In Your House sub-branded event to continue its distinct pay-per-view series. So now we're going to get into the storylines. So for the storylines, The matches over the edge were based on scripted storylines where wrestlers portrayed heroes, villains, and more ambiguous characters in the events that build tension and culminated in matches. Storylines were developed on a weekly WWF television and advanced through a series of confrontations, alliance, and betrayals. The main rivalry centered on the WWF champion Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker at Backlash 1999. The Undertaker adopted Stephanie McMahon, daughter of Vince McMahon, and demanded control of WWF as ransom. Austin intervened to rescue Stephanie, intensifying his conflict with The Undertaker. As a result, the two were scheduled to face each other for the WWF Championship at Over the Edge, with Shane McMahon, who had allied with The Undertaker, initially appointing himself as guest referee, and then Commissioner Shawn Michaels later ruled that Vince McMahon will serve as co-referee to ensure impartial officiating. The rivalry escalated during the weeks leading up to the event, and on an episode of Raw is War, Undertaker attacked Austin by throwing him off the entrance stage. 2 weeks later, Austin retaliated by handcuffing the Undertaker to a large symbol resembling crucifix and raising it above the ring during a live broadcast. So the second storyline involved The Rock and Triple H. Tensions flared when Triple H cost The Rock a match by interference and later attacked him by throwing him off the stage, resulting in a kayfabe arm injury that required The Rock to wear a plaster cast. Acting as an authority figure, Shane McMahon ruled that The Rock would not be allowed to wear the cast during the scheduled match Over the Edge. The event also featured an ongoing faction feud between the corporate ministry and the union. The corporate ministry had formed by merging two previous stables, the Corporation and the Ministry of Darkness. The two groups clashed throughout May 1999, including the mass brawl during the May 10th episode of Raw is War. Their rivalry led to an 8-man elimination tag match scheduled at Over the Edge. Right, so for the pre-show, before that, the start of the live pay-per-view broadcast special episode of Sunday Night Heat aired to build anticipation for the main card, and the opening match Meats defeated Brian Christopher. This was followed by a tag team match in which the Hardy Boys, Matt and Jeff, defeated Goldust and the Blue Meanie. After the match, the Brood, comprising of Edge, Christian, and Gangrel, ambushed the Hardy Boys and their manager Michael Hayes, performing a bloodbath ritual by dousing them in fake blood. In the final pre-show segment, Vince McMahon faced Mideon in a match that ended in a no contest after the corporate ministry attacked McMahon and kayfabe injured his ankle. This storyline developments served as a cast doubt on McMahon's ability to serve as a referee later in the night. The preliminary matches after Sunday Night Heat, the pay-per-view event began with a tag team match in which WWF Tag Team Champions Kane and X-Pac defended against Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown. During the match, Henry lifted X-Pac rammed his back against a steel ring post at ringside. Afterwards, Brown and Henry simultaneously attacked X-Pac, which led Kane to launch himself from the top turnbuckle onto Brown and Henry as the competitors re-entered the ring. Kane performed a chokeslam on Henry, lifted him by the throat. Kane then pinned Henry to retain the WWF Tag Team Championship. Next was a hardcore match which allowed no disqualification or countouts. The WWF Hardcore Champion also defended against Hardcore Holly. Holly and Snow began their match in the ring, but moved their brawl to the arena stands. From there, they proceeded to get to the backstage area, and into the concession stands before returning to the ring. The fight was decided when Snow lifted Holly onto his shoulders and threw him through a wooden table, successfully covering and pinning Holly. Snow retained the WWF Hardcore Championship. The next scheduled match was for the Intercontinental Championship between the Godfather and the Blue Blazer. As Hart descended into the ring, safety harness and equipment gave away and he fell. A medical technicians rushed him to the hospital, but he was pronounced dead on arrival. The show was halted for 15 minutes before continuing with the next match, and a mixed tag team match pitting Val Venus and Nicole Bass against Jeff Jarrett and Deborah. At one point, Jarrett attempted to hit Bass with the guitar, but Venus took the guitar away and dropped Garrett onto the mat and pinned him. In the fourth match of the evening, Billy Gunn defeated his former tag team partner Road Dogg after hitting him with the Keeper's Hammer. So we get into the main event matches. The fifth match was the eight-man elimination tag team match between the Union and the Corporate Ministry. Test was eliminated by pinfall after Bradshaw performed a clothesline from Helm. Bradshaw was then eliminated by submission as a result of Cam Shamrock's ankle lock. Afterwards, Shamrock was eliminated by disqualification as a result of attacking the referee. Then Farouk was eliminated by pinfall after Big Show chokeslammed him. Only one member of each team remained after Viscera and Big Show failed to return to the ring within 10 seconds, and they were counted out as a result. The Union won the match after Mankind forced Big Boss Man to submit with the mandible claw. It was at this point the viewers at home were told by Jim Ross that Owen Hart had died. The final match was on the undercard, pitted Triple H against The Rock. Triple H targeted The Rock's injured arm. Towards the end of the match, Triple H asked Chyna, his valet, to retrieve a folding chair. The referee, however, took it away from him, which led to an argument between Triple H and the referee. Triple H pushed down the referee, which he was disqualified, giving The Rock the victory. After the match, Mankind ran in to save The Rock from Triple H and Chyna. In the main event, Stone Cold defended his WWF Championship against The Undertaker. Originally, Shane and Vince McMahon were supposed to guest referee, but Vince McMahon had his ankle broken early in the event and was replaced by Pat Patterson. From helping The Undertaker, Patterson, however, could not continue after The Undertaker chokeslammed him. The Undertaker and Austin wrestled inconclusively until Austin hit The Undertaker on the head with a folding chair. As Austin went for the cover, Gerald Briscoe, another accomplice of Vince, came down to the ring and replaced Patterson, and was counted the unsuccessful pinfall attempt by Austin. Like his partner Patterson, Briscoe was attacked by The Undertaker. Vince then came down to the ring to act as referee. Then Austin forcefully executed a stunner on The Undertaker. Shane prevented Vince from performing a 3 count as Vince, Shane, and Austin argued. Shane shoved Vince into Austin. He fell into a roll-up by The Undertaker. Shane performed a fast count to give Undertaker the victory and the WWF Championship. Right, so we are going to talk about Owen Hart and his accident. So when Owen Hart was to challenge the Godfather for the Intercontinental Championship, he was performing as the Blue Blazer. The character originally used by Hart in the late 80s had recently been revived as a superhero gimmick as a parody of various wrestlers. At Over the Edge, Hart was to emulate WCW's wrestler Sting's ring entrance by descending from the arena's rafters in a suspended harness, stopping a few feet above the floor, at which point the suspension mechanism would malfunction and drop him unceremoniously onto the ring. The entrance was successfully tested on November 15th, 1998, an episode of Saturday Night Heat, using a different harness configuration. However, during his descent over the edge, a cable disengaged from the safety vest he wore, and he fell approximately 90 feet from the rafters into the ring. As he fell, he landed chest first onto the top rope. The accident was not seen by television viewers. A pre-recorded promo and interview video was shown at the start of Hart's descent, and when the broadcast returned live, the cameras quickly turned away from the ring to the audience. Soon after, Jim Ross, one of the commentators of the event, informed the pay-per-view viewers that Hart had fallen from the rafters, that the incident was not part of the entertainment and that it was a real situation. Ross's broadcast partner, Jerry Lawler, immediately ran into the ring to check on Hart and was visibly shaken when he returned to the announce table on air, saying it doesn't look good at all. At the same time, Spanish language commentator Carlos Pereira was interpreting the Blue Blazers promo, but began shouting "Oh no" repeatedly upon Hart's fall and remained silent for the rest of the promo and interview. As the camera focused on Jim Ross, Cabrera's partner Hugo Savionic, prayed, "I only beg Father God that nothing tragic occurs here." EMTs came down to the ring and gave Hart CPR, but he showed no response to the treatment. Bringing Hart out on a gurney, the EMTs boarded the injured wrestler into an ambulance and took him to the nearby Truman Medical Center in Kansas City. At 7:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, Hart arrived at the center. His Glasgow Coma scale and a system used to measure neurological function was listed at 3 to 15. 3 is the lowest possible score, meaning eye, verbal, and motor function each received a score of 1. A GCS of 3 refers to imminent death or that death has already occurred. The initial reading from the cardiac monitor indicated that he was asystole, meaning that he had no detectable heart activity at all. However, seconds later there were signs of pulseless electrical activity, meaning his heart was not beating, but faint electrical activity was still detectable. At this point, nurses began calling out observations on the apparent lifeless body of Hart to Dr. Michael Tucker. Hart's skin had turned blue, his lips were colourless, and his skin was cold. Nurses also report that he had no bowel sounds and his abdomen was soft. Nurses also noted that he had suffered an apparent open fracture above his elbow and a cuffs below, but these wounds were of little concern to the medical staff at the moment. Nonetheless, the medical staff still persisted and pumped Hart's unresponsive body with epiprofine in an attempt to stimulate his heart. Still no response was detected, even though his heart still showed slight signs of electrical activity. Outside in the waiting room, former wrestler Harley Race awaited word on Hart. Pardon me. He was joined by Jeff Jarrett, who participated at the event in the match immediately after the fall. As the night progressed, a variety of wrestlers who numbered close to a dozen had arrived to get information on Hart's condition. At 8:07, a final dose of the epinephrine and atropine went into Hart's right femoral line. After 4 minutes, he was still unresponsive. CPR was performed in the final few minutes of his life, but doctors determined that all efforts were futile. 13 minutes after arriving at the medical centre, 33 minutes after the fall, all the work on Hart was stopped. At 8:12 p.m., Hart was pronounced dead at the age of 34. The cause of death was later revealed to be internal bleeding from blunt force trauma to the chest, the impact of the fall. So the chest burst on the top rope severed his aorta, resulting in Hart bleeding to death internally just minutes later. After the incident, the event was halted for 15 minutes until Vince McMahon and other wrestlers, other WWE corporate officials decided to continue the event. Hart's co-workers and professional wrestlers and other workers appeared somber after Hart's fall as they continued to perform. An hour after the event restarted, Ross informed viewers that Hart had died, and the fans in attendance were not told of that any information about what happened to Hart, and they did not hear the announcement of his death. So the aftermath of his death, the WWE cancelled the encore presentation of Over the Edge pay-per-view. It also cancelled 4 live events in Canada and 1 in Illinois. The Over the Edge event was never officially released on VHS or DVD due to Hart's death. The event was turned discontinued and it was replaced by Judgment Day. In 2014, the event was shown in an edited form on WWE's online streaming service. All mentions of the Blue Blazer character were also removed from the Sunday Night Heat pre-show, and the episode of the show were added to the network in 2018, while the Blue Blazer gimmick was removed from the video game WWF Attitude. It also featured a tribute to him on the game's startup. On May 24th, 1999, the day following the event, tributes to Hart were held on Raw is War and on WCW Monday Nitro. The WWF tribute was called Raw is Owen for the WWE tribute show. All storylines and rivalries were stopped, and wrestlers were given the option to wrestle or not. The show will also include interviews and testimonies from his co-workers and highlights of his professional career. Owen's funeral service was held May 31st, 1999 in Alberta, Canada. It was attended by family members, friends, and over 300 wrestlers who were acquainted with him. Following the funeral, Hart was buried in Calgary's Queen Park Cemetery. 3 weeks after the event, his widow, children, and parents sued the WWF for causing Owen's death with a poorly planned stunt. They claimed that the harness system was defective. After the court case had extended 1.5 years, settlement was reached on November 2nd, 2000. And the WWF agreed to pay his widow, children, and parents $18 million. And the manufacturer of the harness system had also been named as a defendant in the case, but was dismissed after the settlement was reached. So after the Over the Edge, The Rock began a feud with The Undertaker for the championship, community match in the King of the Ring. After The Rock defeated The Undertaker, Triple H in a triple threat match to win the championship match against The Undertaker. At King of the Ring, The Undertaker defeated The Rock to retain the title. Steve Austin engaged in a rivalry with Vince and Shane McMahon in retaliation for the interference during the match. Austin lost the match at King of the Ring, and his kayfabe 50% control of the WWF. But before he scheduled himself in a title match against The Undertaker, Austin won the match and the title. Eventually, a feud developed between Austin, Mankind, and Triple H over the WWF Championship, which led to the match at SummerSlam, and Mankind won the WWF Championship. Now we are going to get into the reactions of it. So, Vince McMahon and the WWF received strong criticism for designing the stunt that led to his Owens fall, and they also got criticised for continuing. Bret Hart, who at the time was very acrimonious relationship with the company due to the Montreal Screwjob a year and a half prior, blamed Vince McMahon for his brother's death. He questioned if this was really necessary, said, "Shame on you, Vince McMahon." He also claimed that the tribute shoot reeked of disrespect, stating, "Yes, this is a so-called tribute," where afterwards wrestlers point to their crotches and say, "Suck it, it makes me nauseous." Bret Hart later stated that he wished he have been in the WWF at the time so he could have talked to his brother about doing the stunt. The other members of the Hart family who also blamed Vince McMahon for Owens Hart, claiming that the accident was an inevitable outcome of the obsession of ratings and revenues. While in Calgary's for Owens' funeral, wrestler Hulk Hogan stated, "Hopefully something good will happen. Wrestling's gotten way over the top." In reference to Vince McMahon, he added, "I hope he learns a lesson from this horrible accident." Ralph Klein, the Premier of Alberta at the time, expressed the hope that Hart's death would lead to changes in wrestling, stating that maybe the various federations will rethink the gimmickry. Calgary Sun columnist Eric Francis called McMahon's decision to continue to sick, disrespect, and wrong. But what else would you expect from the WWF? If there's any justice in this world, McMahon will pay dearly for his organisation has done further pain to the Hearts. Some fans were also upset with the decision to carry on with the show. One man who left the event with his children upon hearing Hart had died claimed it was disgusting for kids to see that. for this so-called family entertainment. For them to just carry on as if nothing happened, it's sad. Martha, Owen's wife, refused to criticise McMahon publicly in the intimate aftermath of her husband's death. She said McMahon absolutely should be there at the funeral. She said, I am a very forgiving person. I'm not bitter or angry, but there will be a day of reckoning. Commenting on the WWF's decision to continue the show after her husband's death, Martha said after he lost his life, they just scooped him up and ordered the next match out. Where's the humanity? Where would he have wanted the show to go on? Absolutely not. WWF received some support from people who felt the company did the right thing by continuing the event. Vince Russo, a scriptwriter at the time, pointed out the fact that Brian Pillman, a family friend of the Harts and a member of the Hart Foundation, died shortly before by Blood in Your House pay-per-view, on which he was scheduled to perform. After learning Pillman's death, both Brett and Owen went ahead with their matches on the show. Russo claimed that this shows that the night he passed, I'm sure Owen would have wanted the same thing. Vince McMahon refused to comment on Hart's death until he felt sufficient time had passed. When he asked if he felt responsible for the accident, he said, I have a lot to say and I will say it, but I promise you that. But this is not the time to do it. Give me a few days, give me the end of the week, then we will talk. The day after Over the Edge, the WWF published a message in the Calgary Sun stating that we do not have much information as to how it happened, and we will not know until the investigation is completed. We are all shaken, and to say Owen will be missed as full shots of what fully explains what he meant to us. Although the WWF have no information, they reported that our thoughts and prayers are with the entire Hart family. We have to be strong for Owen. He was an extraordinary human being and consummate performer, and knows the highest tribute that we can pay is to go on entertaining the fans he loved so much. So now we're going to get into the reception. So in 2013, Dillian Dye of 411 Mania gave the event rating of 4.5 poor, stating that it was hard to review the event considering the circumstances involving the death of Owen Hart. The matches on the show weren't that good, and the show looked like it wasn't going to be good even before Owen's incident occurred. However, I cannot fault the performance of anyone that had to follow Owen's accident, as it's completely understandable that these guys did not have their hearts in the matches following the incident. The incident is covered in the 10th episode of the second season titled The Final Days of Owen Hart in the Canadian docu-series Dark Side of the Ring. So this is actually a short video than I thought, but I wasn't around for this because again I was born after I was born in 2002, so but I do think it's hard to know whether to go on or to stop something when an incident happens. Obviously the family would not want it to go on because they've just lost somebody, but in the business side of things, you've got these people here who want to show they don't know that Owen had died. At the same time, you got to think of the wrestlers who have just lost somebody they might be close with, and it's like, I don't think they should have gone on with it. They should have mentioned it and then just said we're gonna have to stop, but at the same time it's done now. I think if you don't know what to do in that situation, it's hard to know what to do. Obviously, I think at the time Vince didn't know what to do. Like you can't just go and say he shouldn't have done this, he shouldn't have done that when you weren't in his position. Really, I can't say he shouldn't have done it. I personally wouldn't have done it, but you can't do it if you're not in this situation. Obviously Owen is being remembered in AEW. Martha and his kids have stated they don't hate wrestling, they just hate the WWE because of what happened. So, as I was saying before the dog interrupted me, you never know what's going to happen. So, you can't. I think if you weren't there in the situation or you weren't part of the situation, you shouldn't really say anything. But yeah, it's a very difficult situation to have an opinion on because I wasn't even alive around the time it happened, never mind there. So, but I think people who weren't immediately in the situation shouldn't have an opinion really. They can have their opinions on how they would have handled it, but they shouldn't be saying that seeing what was like the way it was handled by the people involved because they weren't there. They weren't there when it happened. But yeah, I wouldn't have continued it, but I can't say anything more than that because I wasn't there. I wasn't even alive. Obviously, it was a sad time, and people can think about the whatever the way they want. This is obviously controversial because of what happened and the fact that he decided to carry on. A lot of people didn't like that. It probably wasn't the best idea, but we don't know what was going through his head at the time. I know there's a video where you can see Undertaker just staring at where Owen had fallen. It was obviously not a very happy time for the people who know him, but you can't do anything more than just honour Owen as a person. Obviously, the younger generation, anyone who was born after the time Owen was wrestling, probably won't know as much. I only know him because I watched some of his matches. Yeah, you just gotta keep on honouring, haven't you? So, yeah, I thought I'd go in and just talk about what happened, the whole entire thing, and the aftermath. Just because I know that a lot of people just go on about the immediate aftermath of the continue the show and that, rather than the whole entire thing. But yeah.